And I had a man here yesterday from Dow Chemical, and he said that, while there were lots of idealistic statements going about, fundamentally this was a question about business. Isn't it a bit idealistic to say that everyone can win?
Well, Dow Chemical, if I were from the Dow Chemical Company, I would have told how they've made changes, how they understand that some of the chemicals they produced were the most polluting elements that are in our environment. But in fact, they are turning toward green products, and they are turning toward investing more money in transformative kinds of products that would be good for the environment. I'm sorry, I think he missed his own point. But I'm glad if he's a businessman and he thinks that he's about to try to solve the problem through business. But I think what brings us together on the human level is that if I'm interested in idealism or if I'm interested in idealistic projects that change things, that's where I need to be and what I need to work at. And I think that he and I should probably find common ground, so that if he said only business, he would be leaving me out. But if I was to say peace, I don't necessarily think he's left out of the equation. I think he can be a real contributor to it.
Now, how are you getting your message across? Because it's very easy for all of us to go around the world and tell everyone they need to care for the environment, they need to have better values, they need to love their fellow human beings. Right. But let's face it, it's not that easy, and people generally don't do it. So how can you get your message across in an effective way?
Good. We intersect with multi-faith religions, and so tolerance is one of the things. But I think the thing that's interesting here, we do it by holding up organizations from a lot of different sectors that do good things and are understandably peace builders. My favorite one in the United States is the National Peace Academy, because they operate from this level of the multi-sphere level about peace, personal to ecological, and that any of our strategies or actions or initiatives are evaluated on all the spheres to see if, well, do they really transform. And at the UN, there's a coalition, a growing global coalition of NGOs who have this commitment, or who operate in every country in the world. And that was why I handed you that global platform for peace, that resolution that passed in 1995. And at the UN, it's called the culture of peace. And that we have it, but we're so embedded in a conscious appreciation for a culture of war. We assume them. We think it's going to happen. And just as it used to be, poverty was acceptable. Now it isn't. It's the same thing that if we say war's not acceptable, and that it's not idealistic if we apply the strategies that we already have. So it's primarily educational network, coalition building, talking, one person at a time.
Which sounds great. And the final question really is, you talk about coalition building. We're sitting in a room where there are hundreds of organizations, and there are hundreds more that we've interviewed here over the past week. How do you get them all to work together? Because something that strikes me is that there are lots of organizations doing similar jobs, and in a sense they're all competing against each other. So how do you get them all to recognize those values of cooperation and move forward together?
Well, a lot is how you see it. In fact, these organizations are working with different coalitions of people. I was on the street this morning for the rally for a couple of hours, and though the people on the street are getting the message across by singing and dancing and listening to whoever will hear them, they're representing the people who don't get in here. And so they represent rural people, they're poor people, the local people, and they're angry people. So when I walk around these booths that I think are really quite wonderful, I think in some ways we're doing the same thing, but maybe we have a different discourse. So I would say, well, business is part of peace, agriculture is part of peace. But peace, it links the inner sense of who we are, and it takes us to our most precious quality, which is consciousness. Consciousness makes use of the information and that kind of thing. So it's how I wouldn't necessarily agree that they're competing with one another. It's a mindset, so.